All right, I'd like to call to order the Board of Education meeting for Monday, July 8th. If everyone would rise to recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, let the record show that we have all board members present except for Jeff Hires. And Dr. Dirksen wanted to say a couple things.
Yep, I would like to make two announcements. I think one of them's already been preliminarily announced, but we do have a substitute school attorney tonight. We have Glenn Curbs here because Clayton had a busy day today. We have two proud grandparents, and we have a new Creighton Curbs. Sorry about that. And the other thing that I want everybody to notice, you might recognize that we have two fans on the stage we don't normally have. About 3 o'clock this afternoon, I was notified that one of the two air conditioning units on the top that handle this area has quit. They had it looked at today, and the determination was that it needs to be replaced. I am not real excited about replacing a unit that we're only going to be using for 11 months, so I think we can look at some other alternatives. We make it through summer, we'll have the fall and the winter, and we can survive here for that, and I just don't think we need to solve that right now. So I didn't know about it until 3. We'd have made accommodations today because I know it is a little bit warmer. I've already been given permission to take my jacket off, so I would extend that to everybody. We do have some water over here for anybody that if you feel like you need water, we wanted to make sure you knew that too. So I just wanted to explain that. We are aware of the problem, and we'll try to accommodate accordingly.
Thank you. Okay, this is our organizational meeting to start the new fiscal year. And so the first order of business is the election of officers.
I would like to point out that I did provide both pieces of information. It's basically for the board to decide how we're going to handle it. If you decide that you want to have the elections in January, then you have to pass the resolution for tonight to extend the terms until January. If you elect your positions tonight, that is good for a year. But in January, we'll have to make our intentions known because that's a requirement by the new law. So it's totally up to the board, and that's a board decision. That's why I didn't really put a consideration sheet out. It's not for me to consider, it's for the board.
Right. So we have talked about the two different options. I guess personally, I kind of tend to lean towards continuing the way we've done it before, where we elect the officers at this organizational meeting in July, and then reaffirm that in January. But if others are leaning the other way.
That was my thought last month at our meeting, so I'm in favor of that, yeah.
Mine too, because then in January, if we decide that we want to go that different direction, we could.
We could,
Still,
yes.
Right, okay.
Okay. In favor. So, Dr. Dirksen, do we need to make a resolution to continue or we just elect our officers?
If you're electing your officers tonight, you need to just go ahead and do the ballot for president and vice president. However, I want to clarify one thing, and I think I'm right on this. The term for a presidency is for a year. So when you elect a president and a vice president tonight, that's good for a year. What we will do in January is we'll make the declaration that the term will extend until next July. That's the action you'll take in January.
Oh, okay.
The law requires that one of the two actions are taken in January. It does not give you clarification on how to get from here to January. So by election, you'll be taking care of that tonight.
Okay.
Okay.
That makes sense.
No.
So are we taking nominations then, or just, okay, so I would just nominate Lisa to stay as president.
I'll second. All right, we have a motion by motion by Ryan and a second by Tracy. All in favor? And then vice president,
And Jeff serving as our vice president?
Tammy is our
Oh, yeah,
vice
Tammy.
president.
Sorry, Tammy. I apologize.
Well, that's all right.
Yeah, I would make a motion for Tammy to stay as vice president.
okay?
Second.
Right, a motion by Ryan and a second by Jamie. All in favor? 6-0. Okay, we are ready now for the adoption of the agenda. And we have a couple items in our green folders for our review.
I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda.
Okay,
A second?
motion by Tracy and a second by Tammy. All in favor? 6-0. And Tracy, did you have a chance to look the bills over?
I did, and everything appeared to be in order. So at this time, I'd like to make a motion to approve the bills.
Okay.
I'll second.
Motion by Tracy and a second by Jamie. All in favor? 6-0. All right, we have no Stuco reports. Those will start back up in September, the first meeting in September. Now we're ready for recognition of visitors. Persons may present ideas or concerns regarding USD 443 schools. No action will be taken by the board at this meeting. Personalities and behavior of employees are not to be presented during this period, but are to be reported to the employee's immediate supervisor. The president shall determine the amount of time to be spent for citizen participation. If there's anyone that would like to address the board, please approach the podium now. Seeing nobody, we'll scoot on ahead. Okay, next up, we have the consent agenda. That includes the approval of personnel, including the supplemental personnel report, approval of June 24th board minutes, approval of site council annual reports for 2018-19, ratification of the iStation reading, math, and Spanish license renewal, ratification of the Carousel of Ideas premium kits bundles purchase, approval of KSDE Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program grant award for 1920, approval of Board of Education electronic communications and internet access, approval of iPad repairs, approval of 2019-2020 Certified Educator Licensure Professional Development Plan Handbook revisions. This is the second reading. Approval of Kansas Preschool Pilot Grant Award for Bright Beginnings. Approval of renewal of Adidas apparel agreement with Adidas and Neal Brothers. And approval of fiber lease agreement, third-year billable. I did have one question on the KSDE Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program. I noticed that there's 5 schools included in that. Is there a reason why we just have the 5 and not all of them?
I don't know the answer to that. I would have to ask. I do remember talking about that with her. Do you know any part of that, Tammy? It had to do with the different buildings?
I can't say with 100% certainty, but I asked a similar question, and it's my understanding that it was put out of this is available.
Okay.
Are you interested? And those are the ones
That
that came
responded.
back, I believe.
Okay.
Principals know anything? You have any input to that?
Geez, why wouldn't they?
Remember Kathy Conrady asked me if I wanted to do it, I said yes. I don't know what the other
Okay. So it might be more that way.
Very good.
I
Okay.
have a question on C, the site council reports. There seemed to be such a variety of information in each report, and I wondered if there's any information that each school is supposed to provide, because it's kind of hard to,
My recollection of site council reports are that's really generated by the individual schools themselves, and it's the whole idea is for it to be site-based driven.
so it's not,
And so it can't just be a stamped template. It can't be the same at every building because there's different issues and different concerns. So the requirement is that you do meet, that you have a mix of who is in attendance and that you do report to the board annually.
okay.
There's a requirement.
Is there a requirement of like how many or?
It used to be you had to have at least 4 meetings a year. Yeah.
Yeah, they're saying 4.
It's 4 still, so I think you have to cite, and in the report, they should list the times that they did meet, you know,
Yeah.
that they are required. And some choose to meet more than 4, but I think there is a requirement of at least 4 meetings, so.
Well, and we usually get a report in the fall about that, the site councils,
Like the list.
right, and who's a part participating in it and that kind of thing.
And we've already received site council reports from all schools. We already have those, so.
Thank you. Very good. Okay. Any other questions or comments on the consent agenda?
Appreciate we have Adidas as a sponsor, not Nike.
Yes.
We're very grateful for that, and that's a continuation. I did ask a little about that, and that's been going on for more than 12 years, actually 12 years in the formal written process, but yeah, we are thankful for that.
Okay, I make a motion for approval of the consent agenda.
Okay.
Second that.
All right, we have a motion by Tammy and a second by Pamela. All in favor? 6-0. All right, moving on to new business. Under curriculum and instruction, we have the approval of the E-rate funding for network upgrades.
Good evening, board members, board president, Dr. Dirksen. On page 86, I'm coming forward today to what you're actually approving for the Z-rate billing is $27,799. Talked to the business officer. The vendor asked us to pay in full, the full $185,324.60, and then we will get refunded from the E-rate people. It usually takes a few months, and the vendors aren't too happy about waiting for their money. And we've done that before. E-rate is an educational rate program. We get discounts for Category 2 funding in this particular. Yeah, so we got pretty close to $1 million. If you remember a while back, I came to you for other funding. We went a second round, and we still have money left over, but we probably won't get it claimed. We hope it rolls over to the new E-rate cycle. And Category 2 funding is equipment like you see up here, that blue thing, access point switches, anything that puts the internet in kids' hands. Servers and iPads, no, but the internet service is included, but that's Category 1. So today, to make it simple, the summarization there is we applied for $185,324.60. We got funded completely like we're supposed to, which is 85%. And that has to do with our free and reduced lunch. So the more we have of those, get at the higher rate, the more money we get from E-rate. Just thought I'd mention that. So we will get awarded $157,529.91. So if there's no other question, I'm asking for your approval on that.
Okay,
I'll move for approval.
great.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Ryan and a second by Jamie. All in favor? 6-0.
Thank you very much.
Excuse me, thank you. All right. Dr. Springston?
Good evening, Board of Education, Dr. Dirksen. Beginning in your packet on page 92, you'll find the consideration sheet, and then the following pages will be a contract. What I'm asking the board for is approval of a contract with Dr. Socorro Herrera. She's with Kansas State University. We have contracted with Dr. Herrera to work with us, and in this case, it's for culturally responsive professional development, specifically for Beeson. And what the contract is it's not to exceed $50,000. As you would see in the consideration sheet, there's 33 that's already dedicated to Beeson. This will be year 2. Dr. Herrera worked with Beeson Elementary this last year. This coming year, and the reason I'm asking for up to and not exceeding 50 is because we have had conversations with other elementary schools to start to broaden the pilot program out. This is part of our LINK goal. It's one of our 3 goals is literacy, which is reading, writing, and then also culturally responsive teaching strategies. So we have been working with Dr. Herrera and obviously Martha at the school-based site to design what this looks like and the scalability out to other schools. So 33 is already has been encumbered for Beeson, but the $50,000 amount would give us the opportunity to go past that and serve some of our other schools without coming back to the board. That does not mean we would pay her 50. We would pay her for the time and the days that she used. This would all be out of LINK funds. So the money is there and it does fit within our LINK goals.
Okay.
When would they do these professional work days? the 15 days? When would they do them? During school time, after school, Saturdays?
Some, yeah, some are summer, not during the school year, but then also during the days that we have scheduled in the calendar. It could be some of what her work, if you look at her scope, there'd be on-site professional development. But of the 3 phases, one of them is actually on-site monitoring and coaching. So it'd be during the school day. So it'd be following the similar model as our instructional coaches, but she'd be very specific to this topic. So the actual PD instructional, like the content piece, we would work with either the existing days in our calendar or find days that work with the school, either during the day or after hours.
Okay.
We contracted with her a couple of years ago. She did in-service for us, worked with our faculty. She did a really, really nice job, so I appreciate her,
Is this pretty much the going rate
her
now?
work.
K-State is
The best. Is that what you're getting ready to say? The best?
Yeah, I think a lot of what you have to look for is you get what you pay for, but we have to be very cognizant of price and to negotiate. So part of the things in this contract is we said this rate includes, and we were very specific about it, includes pre-prep time, all of your travel expenses, your on-site, and your post-site follow-up. I wanted to make sure it was specified in there in that contract price.
And this is consistent with what she's charged us for other,
It is. I didn't really answer your question. She does great work.
Yep.
Probably in some of our other consultants, she'd be at the higher end.
Yep.
And I think K-State has some say in what they charge.
very highly regarded around the state, if not the nation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll move for approval.
Okay.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Ryan and a second by Tammy. All in favor? 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Human Resources?
Good evening, Madam President, board members, Dr. Dirksen. Our first item on the agenda under Human Resources tonight will be approval of the health benefit plan for 2019-2020. And we've invited Holly Ann Sewell, who is the new head of the Insurance Benefits, Health Benefits Committee. We've decided that we will call ourselves. So I will let Holly Ann present the information contained in this proposal.
Good evening. So in your consideration sheet on page 104 is where it starts. We have a few things that we went over in our several meetings as the committee. One thing that's really exciting is we have no change to our premium rates, but we will be adding benefits this year. The thing that we are most excited about is in the past, our dental plan has been a part of Meritain Health. And it was really confusing because you could buy separate dental insurance, and it was which card did you give them, who covered what. So we have decided to take that dental plan out of Meritain, and we are going to be adding a Delta dental plan for all plan participants. And we actually have the funds and the ability to do what we call the high plan. So it's basically the best plan available with the most coverage for all of our employees that take our health insurance plan. So previously, people that bought up, that will now be covered as part of their general fringe every single month. For our prescriptions, there's no change to the design, but we will be going with a different company this year. They offered some better rates, projected savings of $100,000. And there will be no changes to the prescriptions that are currently being utilized by our members. That was something we really paid attention to and felt was important, that we wouldn't have to go to anyone and say, no, you can't have that anymore. Everything they're currently using is still covered. Meritain offers a program called RX Smart, which is $250 an employee per month. And that's all on the back end. It doesn't it doesn't involve the employee and their prescriptions. It's for the high cost, big items that Meritain calls the doctor and says, hey, why did you prescribe this one for X amount of dollars when this generic is available for fewer dollars? And the doctor has the right to say, I don't want to change that, but sometimes they just don't know that there's a cheaper option available. So it's just trying to inform the providers in our area of what's available and get some savings for us as well. And again, that's all in the back end, doesn't involve the employee or the plan participant at all. We will be adding Teledoc for all employees that are currently taking the insurance plan, and that also covers all of their household members. So When that teledoc becomes effective in October, they'll be encouraged to go enroll in that program. The fee is included already in what their fringe benefit is, but they can enroll all of their household members for that. And it's a 24/7, basically like phone-a-doc. You can call them. I use the example a lot of, I know my body and I know when I have strep throat. I don't necessarily need to go see a doctor. I just want the prescription fast so I can get back to school. They can call the doctor can listen to their symptoms, say, yes, that's something I can prescribe medicine for you, or no, you need to go schedule an appointment and see someone. We talked about it for new parents. They can use that if there's something wrong with the baby that they think should be happening and it's not happening. They can call and someone can tell them, oh, that's normal, wait another 12 hours, or that's not normal, go to the doctor. So just another line of defense and health access for our members. We talked a lot about our vision plan and changing that, but there's currently over 25 different plans offered to our members for them to buy up. So that's something that we're going to evaluate this next year to look to see if next year we can add a more comprehensive vision plan, but we won't be taking anything away. We're going to stay with the same company for our specific and aggregate coverage, and we just got bids in yesterday, official bids for that. We're going to stay with the Providers Care Network and the Aetna for out-of-state claims, and then remain with Meritain for our third-party coverage. Any questions?
I like the teledoc option. I've used it before. and
I'm
it's,
really excited for
very
it.
convenient.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good additions to this, and that teledoc's a great example, and it is for the entire family, even if you're on a single plan. But
Yes.
the whole premise is, we hope to keep our employees coming to work, and by having this option, they don't have to wait a day to go to the doctor and take a day off. And so we hope in some cases that does improve our absenteeism, so.
Yes.
I really like the changes that are happening in the
Yeah,
health.
they're
plan.
very
That's great.
positive.
Yeah.
It's a direct result of all the review that we did and everything that came out of that. And I think it turned out to be a very positive project that we're seeing some benefits from now,
Very
so.
good.
Yes.
Great.
I'll make a motion to approve the health benefit plan for 1920.
Okay.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion by Tracy and a second by Pamela. All in favor? 6-0. Thank you.
Thank you, Holly Ann. The next item I will be bringing before the board tonight is a request to add some additional paraprofessional / substitutes to our buildings. We had quite an issue last fall, or last year actually, where a number of our teachers had to be absent due to flu and different things, and we were hit really hard at our elementary schools. And as a result of that, it was a strain on our sub pool. And you may be aware, it's kind of a byproduct of having a really great opportunity in our district to go from being a sub to being a teacher. Well, the byproduct is you don't have enough subs left. And so we're still working on that, hoping to get there. You've approved us to raise that sub rate. So hopefully we will regenerate some subs. But in the meantime, we anticipate that we will continue to have a shortage of subs. And as a way to address that, it is being recommended that we put at each of the 9 elementary schools this sub-para float person who's a permanent fixture in that school. Their main function will be to serve as a substitute teacher. They will be required to have the 60 credit hours that it takes to have the sub license and to be a certificate holding, substitute. So that would be their first defense in helping with issues at the elementary schools. They will serve in that sub capacity. If there should ever be a day when they're not needed to serve as a substitute, they will go into a classroom and serve as a para. So the request comes forward to put 7 in. I know we have 9 elementary schools, but Tammy Nedler has said there are a couple of schools that they already have that opportunity sort of in place, but we need to bring in 7 additional people to make sure that every one of the 9 elementaries has the same position available to them.
What rate, are they're at the para rate, or is the
Well-
sub rate higher? I don't,
It is, the sub rate is higher. Now, we have done this already last year and years before. If we have a paraprofessional that happens to hold a sub license and we're short, we will pull that para out of the classroom, make them the sub teacher in charge for the day, and pay them the equivalent rate for that. So they kind of clock out as their para and clock in as the sub, and we can track all of that. And they get paid the para rate when they're a para and the sub rate when they're a sub. So the reason why that is not necessarily ideal is because the teacher plans on having that sub available in the classroom. Has that para available in the classroom, and then suddenly they're pulled out. So that changes the teacher's plans for that day. It changes the way things are delivered to students that day. For not only the class that had the teacher call in sick, but for the one that had the para pulled as well. So in trying to protect that educational environment, leave the para there and utilize this other individual first.
so do you think you'll pull from current paras to fill this slots, or are you going to have to hire those from?
Well, that'll be the next challenge. It's just like hiring enough teachers, hiring enough subs, hiring high-quality paras. It's a great concept, and we'd love to be able to have a full pool to pull from. But that may not be realistic. It could be that we ask for these 7 positions and we don't get all 7 of them filled. That's a possibility. But we are going to try. And the thing that I think is really encouraging, not only with this request, but the one that I'll make next, is the fact that we do, as a district, pay for half of the tuition and fees at the DC3 rate to go get those 60 credit hours. So while we may not have immediately 7 people to put in these positions, I think we'll have some that can work into that.
Very good.
Now, you talk about these being used for absence, the teachers are absent in the classroom. Are we making a real effort not to take teachers from the classroom for meetings, or does that ever occur? It doesn't
Yes,
occur?
we are. We're
Okay.
making a great, we're
Okay.
doing everything we can to utilize the time that we have when we do, and then be very strategic with that time, so we're not constantly full. We are.
Okay.
Okay. I make a motion for approval.
All right, motion by Tammy and a second by Pamela. All in favor? 6-0.
Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda under Human Resources is a request for interventionist paraprofessionals, and this is through the ESL/migrant program. And I want to describe how this is something different. I think maybe it's been done in the past, but it hasn't been lately. If you remember, gosh, what's it been, Dr. Benton, a year ago, we came to you asking for the ESOL incentives for our teachers, with the thought of the more teachers that we have embarking on that endorsement, the more money that it brings into the district. And we've had great success with that. A lot of our teachers are indeed embarking on that endorsement because of the incentives the board voted to put in place, which has generated some revenue for the district. So that's a good thing. And one way to utilize that revenue to get it back down to the students that really are the driving force behind this initiative is by hiring interventionists that are dedicated to doing some one-on-one work with our newcomer students at the elementary programs. You will maybe recall that our middle schools and our high schools have have newcomer programs. Our elementary really has been lacking in support for those students that come in, different countries, different languages, those kinds of things. And by having an interventionist para available to them, they won't pull them out of the classroom, but they will do some small group work with those newcomer students working on literacy, speaking, reading, writing, other things that tie in very closely with the DC Link initiatives that we're working on as a district. So Dr. Benton has put forth this plan that is a very good use of those additional funds coming into his program by hiring at the elementary level these interventionists to work with varying classes at each school.
If I may interject at that point, and Dr. Vinton, you can help me on this, but I do believe you did a pretty thorough study of the different approaches, and Dr. Herrera was involved in this decision as well, the consultant that we just talked about, and of all the different, I don't know how they always find the board meeting, but of all the different possibilities, this was the one that was most highly recommended.
Exactly. And speaking with Dr. Herrera, she did present some other different programming that is available throughout the nation, but we have to look at our own context and what is it that we're able to bring forward to the table. And this is one way in which we can deliver services to our students, and we will get the benefit of that, of having students working one-on-one with an interventionist. So this is what she recommended, and this is the path that we decided to take.
So is this plan will have special training for these paras to be able to?
Yes, they will have professional development. That is closely related to the culturally sensitive, culturally related instruction that Dr. Springston was speaking about, employing the strategies and techniques with these students.
Very good. Okay.
Do you want to mention the higher qualifications, higher paying?
Yes, one of the things that we asked for is that these individuals also be involved in collecting information about our students that the teacher and that they can use also. Included in that, of course, is ongoing and consistent evaluation of their language acquisition. But in association with that would be their acculturation rate, trying to find out which students are acculturating the most quickly. The benefit of that is that students that acculturate more quickly, they're able to transition more easily, and we need to monitor that. Also, a lot of our students may come in with some social emotional trauma because of all the things that are happening. And we need to be aware of that, because as teachers need to be aware that these students may have suffered something, and that would include making sure that they're aware of it and taking the steps to address that SEL piece. So they are also responsible for that. So planning for the students, sitting down with a teacher and being able to have a conversation and as to how to best address the needs of these students. All of these components are going to be wrapped around this position. The ultimate hope of all of this is that at some point they become teachers as well.
Very good.
So is there like a minimum amount of training expected before they start working with the students, or kind of not, or?
Well, I know that we're looking for people that have an associate degree.
Okay.
If not, then we have to take a step backward and be able to work with individuals that have had some sort of professional development. But the professional development will have to be developed, and as of yet, we haven't determined or made a determination as to how much professional development they will need to have before they begin to work.
Okay.
It will be ongoing. But I do know that it will be profound, and it will impact students in the manner that we seek.
Okay. All right, thank you.
And the only thing I want to add to that is I want to make sure you understand the part. We have made some incentives that have added to the funding that we receive, but the state expects us to return that funding into those particular areas. We get at-risk funding because of the weightings that we qualify for. We're expected to justify how we are spending our at-risk funding, and we talked about that earlier. We get funding for ELL and for migrant, and we have to be able to document that. And the extra incentives that we've implemented have brought us the extra dollars, and this is a good incentive for us to use that, because the state is putting more push on showing that documentation or that requirement that you're fulfilling, instead of just using it as a coffer to take money in.
Okay.
So if you have a student that's in third grade, a newcomer that's in need of support services, or a fourth grader, how will that be coordinated? I see that they'll be working with them during the small group center time. So are those offset then, those time periods? So yeah, if you have a newcomer that's needing help, that's needing learner support, that's in third grade and then you have one at fourth grade, how will the para work with different sets of students in that way at different grade levels? Will they?
One of the things that we envisioned is that the para will go ahead and develop their schedule before they begin, and they will ensure that every student that has been identified within that school will receive some sort of support. You know, and in looking at this, trying to be as pragmatic as possible, they would speak to the teacher. We already know who the newcomer students are. These are the students that I want to work with. This is the time that I can work with them, and then move on to the next teacher and so forth. At any given time, it's a moving target as to how many students will be at any particular school. But sometimes we have 12, sometimes we may have 20, and that number will fluctuate. Because, I mean, they come, they're here, they leave, others come, and so forth. So,
Kind of what we're visioning with this too is like to hopefully eventually create like a individual language plan type of thing, not an IEP, but the concept of if the child just needs some additional support in the classroom with just some little prompts and some of the things, that might be what it looks like, or it might be a very specific pull over and focus on. It's going to be really specific to the kid, and right now, because we're just kind of in the development process, it's really hard to give an exact this is what we'll do. So it just depends on what the child's need is, where their level of acquisition is. If it's a newcomer who has a good, strong grasp on the academic piece, just needs the language to connect it, then that's going to just be kind of a support there. And some of our kids are coming where they've not been in school at all. So not only do they not have the language, but they don't have the academic background, well, then that's going to be a different approach.
yes, and that is exactly what part of the collection that I was talking about and as related to data. Being able to develop an individualized education plan for each one of our newcomer students. Not only will it benefit the para interventionist or the interventionist para, but also it is a document that can be handed off to somebody else as it continues to be changed. Handed to a teacher and say, this is where the student is at. This is the information that we have gathered from the student, parents, community, prior knowledge.
So there'll be one at each elementary center, is that what did I hear that?
That's our goal.
One at each elementary school?
Yes, we'll have one at each elementary school and a half-time position at Willroads Garden. The other half-time will be for coordination, and that coordination involves a professional development, making sure that all the documentation that we need is in place, and making sure that that our students are receiving the instruction that they need. Okay.
Can I ask real quick, was it, and correct me if I'm wrong, weren't we going to do something like that at Sewell, like in the basement?
That's what I
where they all come together? You know, that we had talked about doing that?
When we were looking at options for what we could do with that, we did talk about a newcomer center, but that's a completely different model than what we're talking about here. And as we introduced, when we looked at the different models, it is suggested by those that have had experience with it that this is the best way to work, especially with elementary students. Because of just introducing them to the curriculum. The other thing that's very important is we're competing against ourselves. We just talked about paras for the substitute para role, and then we're talking about a very specialized interventionist that is in that category too. So it's going to be hard to fill all of these positions, but the need is there. And the funding we've been able to justify, and we've got to start with the board's permission, and then we got to try to fill that role. But you are correct, and that doesn't mean that we won't someday look at that for especially our middle school and older students too. So.
Didn't we do that at one time, several years?
Yes, we did have newcomer students, but along with that type of programming, it brought forward other issues that we had to address in different ways. So it wasn't, I mean, the program that we're talking about is probably the most appropriate because it really takes into consideration the context of Dodge City. And given those dynamics, this is the recommendation that was made to us. We could have a newcomer center, yes, but along with that, there would be ramifications that we would have to address as these children were brought together, siblings, et cetera. those kinds of things. So this would be the best way to go.
That makes sense.
I just like the idea because I just felt I would be more comfortable as a student going in with other newcomers to get accustomed to what you were doing. I guess that was where I liked when you came up with that idea, that it would be more comfortable for a student to be with other people going through the same thing as you than just to be thrown into a classroom with a para.
And that is a very solid point, but that works most proficiently at the secondary level. At the elementary level, probably not as well. Okay. Because they're at a point and a time in which language is really developing, and for them to be able to hear native speakers, and this applies to all second language learners, it would be the most appropriate and the most effective for them to remain in the school versus having them being transported somewhere else.
But this is just grade school.
Yeah.
So the research is showing then that more or less immersion is the way to
With support.
benefit them. Yeah, absolutely. That would be the
Well,
most
it is
beneficial for the
immersion,
learning process.
yes, it is, but there is, like Dr. Dirksen mentioned, there is tremendous support. The thing that we need to look at is to make sure that whatever programming we have meets the requirement of the Office of Civil Rights. This does meet the requirements of the Office of Civil Rights. We are within the parameters, we are within the law. Okay? Any more questions?
I'm not against this. I just think in the future, I'd like more detailed, so we have a better understanding maybe about the direction you're moving. I mean, not that it's a bad one, and I truly, trust the professionals that are doing this. I just would like a little clearer understanding, I guess, of that.
And I appreciate that. And I think that we should take that responsibility seriously. What I want you to know is we're trying to make an effort to implement something that we recognize as a weakness that we haven't been implementing. And we need to do the best that we can. And this is kind of the program that has evolved, if you will.
Yes.
And it too will change with time. I mean, nothing stays the same. So, but I agree with you, and we will take
Yeah,
that
I mean, I don't think
seriously.
new's bad, going a new direction if
I
that's
get
the
it.
way. I just would like a little, would you guys appreciate a little clearer understanding?
Yeah, because the reason I had mentioned that we had done that years ago was, well, I don't talk about it often, but this is conducive to talking about it. But my wife was from Mexico, as some know. My children are bilingual. My wife's first cousin from Mexico came and stayed with us for about a year, and she was 11 years old when she came to us. And if I recall correctly, she was part of a newcomers group, but they had their separate classroom at that time. And in her case, right, which is an individual case, I mean, her ability to adapt, especially to the English language, was, I mean, phenomenal. So whatever they were doing to work with those individual students, I mean, when she first came, conversations were in Spanish or very little English. By the time she left, she could have a conversation full in English. That was just a year. It probably speaks to her intelligence and the young mind, its ability to absorb. But that's why, kind of to Jamie's point and a couple of things that had already been mentioned. So just because of my experience with that, that's why I was kind of leaning that way. But then that's why I followed up at the research is showing different, and I can understand why we might be proceeding like this as well.
One of the things that we really need to look at, and this is part also of the data, is the fact that we really need to be intentional when we begin to look at the data that we collect for our students as related to newcomer students. Because if you have an individual that comes in that is academically proficient in their own language, then that student is going to transition into English very, very quickly. I mean, we're talking about night and day.
Sure.
However, if we have another individual that is coming and they have attended kindergarten for 6 months and now they're in third grade, the needs of that student are going to be radically different. And those are the ones that we really need to focus on and make sure that we are being as reflective and as intentional as we possibly can be in terms of how we deliver instruction to that child. Okay.
Very good.
And in terms of your question, it would take some time, but yes, I would be willing to go ahead and talk about all these different dynamics and programs, et cetera, and those kinds of things.
Okay, that'd be, I mean,
Just
that'd
let
be
me
great
know.
if we could do that, even 2 or 3 times different, throughout that. That'd be great.
And as we look to the future, let's not forget that we do have that space in the bottom of Sewell, and we have still not defined what the cause is. And that's not saying we're not ever going to go in that direction. But I do think we need to be always cognizant of that area, and we need to figure out what its purpose is for this district and start moving that direction. I don't think it's going to benefit us to just leave it there. I don't think it'll have the same value in 10 years if we don't.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you making it a little clearer.
Yeah, and I'm all for this. I'm great.
Yeah, me too.
It's great that we can offer this kind of support, so I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
Motion by Ryan and a second by Tammy. All in favor? 6-0. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. The final item under Human Resources tonight is request for an additional extra duty position, and it is for a tennis coach at the secondary level. The program has grown in popularity, and just, yeah, I know, that's a good problem to have, right?
I'm
And-
containing myself.
And just the logistics of everything from the coaching to the one-on-one, to the transporting, to handling at tournaments, to just managing more kids wanting to become more involved requires that we put an additional position out there for someone to help with that. So in this request, that's what we're asking for, is just due to the large number of students interested in this program, that we add a position so it is adequately staffed.
It's great to see programs growing.
And it's great that, I mean, I feel like tennis is one of those skills that you can.
Life skills.
Yeah, that you can use throughout your life.
How many courts do we?
Have 8
We have just 8
at the high school.
at the high school, so,
Matt, do you have the number of courts?
yeah, 8.
8.
8.
Oh, there's Jackie.
That's, and both boys and girls practice?
No.
Different
they have
seasons.
different
Different
seasons.
seasons.
Coach boys in the fall, girls in the.
Girls in the fall, boys in the spring.
But then sometimes they go to meets and they have to be at different locations. And that's where they also, especially when they get that many numbers. So.
I'll make a motion to add the additional tennis program.
Second.
Motion by Tracy and a second by Ryan. All in favor? 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Dirksen?
Yes, ma'am. All right, the next item is a very important one, and I want to share with you that we have to operate under some assumptions tonight for the simple fact that the school finance department from the state has not released the budget form yet. The software was supposed to come out today, and about 9 o'clock this morning, I got an email from KSDE that it will be released on Wednesday, which very likely could mean it's not till Thursday or Friday. If you look at the timing with no other board meeting in July, and the law has not changed, we still have to have a budget to the clerk by August 25th, which means that it has to be in the paper so that we can have opportunity for public to make comment when we publish the budget, and having the official hearing is what I'm trying to say before it's approved by the board in the August meeting. Some things have to take place in the meantime. I provided for you in your green folder, and I have on the board a historical listing that is kept track of. And because we have a qualified staff, and because we already know the valuation, I'm already able to give you some projections of what the budget is going to look like, and they will be very solid. I can't tell you they're going to be exact, but what I've heard the board say and what my philosophy has been is we want to hold the mill levy flat. And we're talking about the total mill levy when we talk about the mill levy. So with that in mind, what we will do this year, we have no control over the general fund. It is always 20 mills. It's set by the state legislature at 20 mills, and it will be 20 mills. we do have control over the LOB. In the LOB this year, we have permission to go up to 33%. If we, and 33% is of the general fund. If we maximize that 33%, that puts us at 20.338 of a mill right now, based on the valuation that we were given by the county clerk this month. And so that shows a slight increase. Our capital outlay, we have authority by statute to have maximum authority of 8 mills. And if we max that out at 8 mills, which we need to be thinking about our capital outlay, because with the new administration office, we need to acquire the most that we possibly can. So if we move that to 8 mills, we had something very helpful happen this year. And that was in the bond and interest. Our state aid increased for this year by 5% from the state. So this year, we've already received from the state that for our bond and interest, our state aid this year, and board members, you need to know this when you're talking to your community, is at 73%. Every dollar that we raise for our bond and interest, it is funded 73% by the state. Had you not passed the bond issue when you did, like within the 12 hours that you did pass the bond issue, that number would be 42% instead of 73%. That was an incredible move that you made, and it's benefited this district in a huge way. So this year, because of that, we are able to adjust the bond and interest. And what I want you to know about adjusting that, we're very cognizant of the fact that we still have a payment to make for many years. And in lowering this bond and interest mill levy to make up the difference of the increases that we are allowing to push the numbers on the capital outlay and the LOB, we are still able to make the required payment and add to the reserve in bond and interest, which that is a very positive thing. That the money that we're bringing in is still adding to the reserve, so that as that bond increases in requirements in the years, the reserve is building also, so that if something was to ever happen, we have that money in the reserve. So we're not jeopardizing ourselves in the bond and interest. We're not only meeting the payment, but we're adding to the reserve, which is the best position that you can be in right now for this to happen. So when you factor all of those categories in, it does come out that we are able to leave the mill levy flat, which is the goal that the board had, and it's what we'll be able to report when we do the budget. The only way this changes is in November, when the county clerk certifies the valuations. If there was a drastic change in that, that wasn't the information that she gave to us, we can't control the few tenths or hundredths that it may go up or it may go down. You understand that? I can't project what the county clerk is going to do in the final numbers, but consistently over the years, it's been within hundredths of a point with what she has projected for us. So I feel good about that. I feel good about this. I worked with this with Molly and with Nikki and with Dale Dennis, and this is the assumptions that I want to provide for your approval, so that when we do bring you a completed budget, once we get the software, it will reflect this. And that's what you're giving me the authority tonight, along with the permission to publish such budget in the paper to meet the deadline so that we can accommodate those requirements.
When we publish that in the paper, can we put a little note in there, a little hoorah to us for?
No, we can't do that. But you can sure do that on a Final Friday and other events that you attend when you're talking to people, and tell them how good of a thing it is. Because there are many good things that did happen that we need to be very proud of as a district, and has really made it opportunistic for us. And the bond project certainly could not have been done otherwise. Now the state has limits on the amount of bonds that they can approve, and you have to go to the state and get approval before you can go to a bond election. You have to get permission from the State Department now to hold a bond issue, and there is only, this year, the number is $360 million. There's only $360 million in the state that can be approved for bonds. That only takes 2 big projects, and you're out of bond reserve, and no one else can have a bond election. So.
In your conversations throughout the community, do you have any idea if the other taxing entities are looking at going flat, or has there been discussion of?
I think the goal has been to go flat. I think the county is actually trying to go a little bit down, is what I've heard. Would you confirm that for me, Elliot? Can't confirm that? Okay, but that's basically, as far as I know, it's staying the same. I have read with interest that Hutchinson is going up. I get the Hutch News still. Yeah, I mean, there are just other situations, other communities. That's the city of Hutch that was being recommended to increase. So, no, all I can do is take care of myself here, but we have shared that, and that's kind of what I've heard from everybody.
Very good.
Okay, I make a motion for approval for the budget and revenue assumptions, including the published budget.
Second.
Motion by Tammy, second by Ryan. All in favor? 6-0.
I want to point out on that mill levy analysis that the increase in valuation continues to be steady and not a big jump, which I personally think that's what you like to see, because I'm always suspicious when you see large increases or whatever. So that is something to take note of as well. Thank you for that permission. All right, the next item we need is for renewal of workers' compensation. Provided a consideration sheet that explained most of that. We actually have a decrease in the premium, and don't know if there's anything to add. Is there anything to add to that, Ramona? Do you know anything about that? We do have to have it. It does have that information.
There's a decrease, that's good,
Yeah, that's good.
always.
I'll move for approval.
Okay.
Second.
Motion by Ryan, second by Jamie. All in favor? 6-0.
All right. Some clarification has came on the additions, and this is really the architect agreement portion. But we do now know that there is going to be some help from the National Guard in picking up 75% of the actual cost for that area that has been described. And I think that it was determined by the city that they don't need that drainage that we had talked about at this time. And so with that all being said, the requirement for the architect did come in below the required amount for board approval, but I thought it was too close and didn't want to play games with that. I want you to see exactly what's going on. We do need the architect's agreement in order to complete this so that the contractor can then finish their project. This is for the north end of what has already been approved, and I just wanted to be transparent and share that information with you.
So for clarification, the National Guard stated they would not be doing their part of the, they can't fund it? Is that the way I read it?
That's how I read it.
How I read it, yeah.
With the National Guard picking up 75% of the cost of the National Guard Uniform Administration, they would not be able to participate in the parking lot renovation this time. Therefore, the scope of the project terminated that. Yeah, I said the city. It actually meant the National Guard on that. So, yeah, I mean, so what is cleared up is the picture of what is actually being done on that. So this is for that portion, but yeah, you're right. I'm sorry, I was misquoting myself there.
So that'll be old pavement, we'll have new, and then it'll just stop.
We're gonna be able to.
Is it gonna be a different level, maybe 6, 8 inches? Ka-chunk.
Well, we don't really have much control over that. I mean,
Yep,
How
yep.
big, I'm sorry, how big is that area from the National Guard?
It's from the road
South?
where you can possibly turn in. If you go there, there's actually a stake there that shows the property. I don't see a measurement there
The
to
turnoff.
give you the idea, so I'd be
Oh, there it
wrong
is. I see
in
it.
quoting
Okay.
the amount of space, so,
Good job.
Yeah. 59 feet.
I had
yeah.
a question on the parking lot, that we approved last time.
Yes.
Shouldn't we have to rebid that? if it didn't go into the original, I mean, like I said before, it should have been to me in the whole project, because you knew you were going to come up with you knew you had to tear out the concrete to repave.
Yeah.
So should we have had that rebid
I would
by
have
other
to
people?
yield to the attorney on that, but I think when you go with a construction manager at risk, then you're just asking for amendments to the bid, and that's all within the scope of what you can do.
Yeah, as long as you don't go over whatever that amount is.
So I think that's how that did not go through that process, because that's exactly what they did come to us with.
So it was originally in the bid? Because it's really not an amendment to the bid, is it?
Was it originally part of the project, though? That
Yeah, it was the original part of the project. We just added to the approved part of, I mean, the original base was 4 inches, and they increased it to 6, I believe is the numbers just off the top of my head.
Yeah.
So it was in the bid. We just added to that. So it wasn't something totally, it wasn't like you added a new annex or a new area.
Okay.
So I understand. But I do think it's under that construction management at risk that it goes through that process. That's why that's justifiable.
I think it's too bad that they're not going to do that, because I think the looks of it for the city, for
The armory?
city, it's not going to be as aesthetically pleasing.
Wasn't that going to be grant funds supposedly they maybe could get, though? Isn't that what they said last time? They might
They
have
were
funds
relying
available?
on,
Yeah.
grant money.
Yeah.
Be nice.
Ours not available.
It'd be prettier. Aesthetically, I think it would be
Yeah.
nicer for the city.
I don't know what else I can do about that at this point, because
Nothing.
I'll move for approval.
I'll second.
Motion by Ryan and a second by Jamie. All in favor? 6-0.
all right. In your packet, you do have information about the form that was sent by policy. The board does have to approve, asking for a waiver of fees from last year. I do point out that they did make partial and weren't able to complete it. Would ask for your approval for waiving of last year's fees.
Okay.
I'll make a motion, and then after we vote, I've got a couple questions.
Okay.
So I move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Ryan and a second by Tammy. All in favor? 6-0.
How much revenue did we generate? Do we generate off of the textbooks and workbooks?
225,000.
225,000. It's more than I expected.
Yeah, me too.
And and that's what we actually collect? Okay.
Yeah, that's the revenue that just came in. We assess more than that, but we actually don't have a whole lot of outstanding fees. For a district our size, we're really doing pretty good.
Well, and don't they have throughout the school year to pay that? It's not like they have to pay it at the
Yeah,
beginning.
well, and just like this one, I mean,
Right.
they tried through the whole year and they made some movement, but, and originally I'd talked about that, and it's something we need to look at in the future, but with our textbook curriculum moving forward, I wanted to make sure we have revenue coming in, so after I saw how sizable that fund was, bringing in revenue, felt like we needed to continue that until we know where we're at with getting into a rotation of ordering curriculum materials.
Yeah, we
in the
haven't
future.
spoken about this, but you must know where I was going with that based on your comments.
Well-
I wasn't expecting that much revenue, even though we get that, I just didn't remember it being that much. I was thinking like 100,000, which is a substantial amount of money, but I was thinking, well, maybe we just move away from charging.
Pretty simple math. When
That's-
you have 7,000 kids and you're charging about $30 a kid,
Kid,
well,
yeah,
it
absolutely.
brings in
So-
right around that number.
right,
So,
yeah.
I mean, that's just round figures.
Okay, but that's something, based on where we're going with textbooks and things of that nature, this is something we might
Yeah.
revisit.
We definitely want to look at it in the future, and we need to think about that because we need to be cognizant of where we are and what we're trying to do. So, but right now, I want to make sure we can implement and utilize the best programs possible. So, and we don't even know what those are yet. We're in the process of selecting that.
Okay.
Some districts that don't find that students don't take as much care or don't have ownership, parents don't feel the ownership of the books, and
Yeah.
not always, but that can happen.
Okay. Next item I want to ask the board for is approval for our district radio replacements. We've been working hard on this. Matt, be sure and help me out when I need help, but right now we're asking for approval of a couple of items that have to do with adding the new radios. Because I'm trying to get a handle on capital outlay and what we're going to do this year with our capital outlay projects and all that, I made a decision that I want to go into this slowly rather than an all-at-once deal. Because I want to make sure with the new facility being built and with the demands that we have, with air conditioners breaking down, and some will break down for students, which we won't have to pause and think about for a year. I just wanted to be safe than sorry. And once I see the picture, we may turn around. Some of these radios are state bid through the procurement program. The only thing we'll miss out on is there is a quantity savings when you order a large amount of radios. It's several $1,000s, I admit, but I'd rather know I had the money and capital outlay than to just make that bundle savings, if you will. So we've put together a package for ordering radios for the high school, for the administration.
That's correct.
Okay, those two areas. And we need those desperately. And we also have the bi-directional. Where are we at on that?
We're still working on that because visiting with Clayton, we've got to put that out for bid and go through that whole process on the BDAs. So
Yes, and we've got to have those to clear up the dead spots. But even without getting the dead spots cleared up right away, we've got to have the radios because they continue to break down and need to be replaced.
well, and one of the reasons we focused on the high school is Jackie was going to have to replace 8 to 10 of them to start this next school year anyway. So in talking, it was best just to replace that whole bunch there so training could be all taken care of at the high school at one time.
And to clarify, we are trying to do the bi-directional amplifier as soon as possible. We're just in the process of getting the bid because it had to be put together in a whole different process. And so that will come in August, we hope, correct?
Hope.
That's the plan that we've got lined up. And in this bid, the service agreement, we need to make sure we talk about the service agreement that we have in the bid.
And that will start in January.
And so it'll be prorated for the first year? Or is it actually a price that is for the year? And it's on the calendar year rather than the school year? Our friend Elliot is going to fill us in and give us the answer.
So typically, those agreements are billed in January. They are for the entire year. Since you guys would be coming on after, we do 2 counts. We do every 6 months, so we do January and June. So if you're not on the system by June, which obviously you aren't, essentially we would look at billing you next year at the January count, and it would fall into a January cycle. If the June date makes more sense, I'm sure we can work with the commission to make that happen.
I think that, in my thinking, we just need to do it annually anyway, so it doesn't matter whether it's.
Yeah, it's an annual billing.
And so we'll just consider that part. And actually, we were thinking that when we were talking about the package of what we're trying to put together, and then increase it from there. So, obviously, we've talked about this many times. It's very critical, I believe, in the steps towards our safety and what we're trying to accomplish. We are not going to hesitate on moving forward on these. I just want to make sure we're doing it incrementally in a way that we can handle the changes that will come about. So I think this is the best way to do it. Matt's helped me significantly. Elliot has too.
And if I might, to support Dr. Dirksen's position and your position as a board, the county stance is we're all in this together. So there's a lot of services, there's a lot of processes, there's a lot of things that are happening in addition to this. We talk about the user agreement, we talk about radios, we talked about phased implementation and BDAs and all that kind of stuff. The BDAs help our first responders in the buildings. We in turn are working very hard at dispatch to monitor those emergencies and respond to them in real time, patching people directly through to first responders that are either on site or going to be on site quickly. So there's some unprecedented stuff that we're doing here. The level of integration you guys are achieving with first responders is exceptionally rare and exceptionally unheard of. So, I mean, for a 911 center to be monitoring not just your 911 calls, but also all of your radios for emergency buttons and things like that, that's a big deal.
It is a
You guys
big
should
deal.
be very proud of that.
Yep, definitely.
I do have concerns on the user fee. Just in discussions with other emergency managers, they felt that that was exorbitant, $250 per radio. I understand if there's other law enforcement agencies or emergency services on your system, $250 a radio, but literally the only time that you'll touch it is if someone hits a panic button or an emergency happens. So our daily use of the radios, a $250 per radio fee is
And that's per year, too.
per year.
We have to
That-
realize that.
I mean, as an example, if we were to put our radios on the state system, it's not the same antennas, but the signal flows. It doesn't stop at one antenna necessarily, unless it goes down. If
Yeah,
you have a
so-
system that's not reliable, then
I get that.
at times the state's antennas do go down, and then the counties has to make up for the radius. But at that rate, it is extraordinary, on top of the investment we're already making by going to 800 radios, which is a
I don't
huge.
disagree that it's a commitment, but I do feel like it is in working toward the efforts that we are for safety to be a focus. We have the best and the highest potential of having that provided for us through coordination, as was mentioned, with the county and with all of those connectivities that become possible. I visited, actually day one, I visited with Elliot about that user agreement. I've tried to find different ways to approach that because I understand that's going to be an ongoing cost. That's a significant commitment.
And if I might address it a little bit from
Absolutely.
the county side, one of the things that I want to convey is when we talk about we're in this together, we essentially view ourselves as a bit of an island out here. Southwest Kansas, the closest radio techs are 2.5 hours away. The next closest are 4 hours away. So we've essentially made an investment to program, maintain, test, tune radios in-house, okay? So typically those services, recently I saw an invoice for programming 800 radios for $175. Minus mileage. So when we look at the amount of time and energy we're willing to commit to it, the $250 per radio really pays for itself. We're talking about testing and tuning them every year. We're talking about, new code plugs every year, keeping them up to date.
So is that unlimited?
Far more up to date than you might
Unlimited
see a state
programming and
radio.
stuff, since you guys all do it in-house?
It's a very, very streamlined process. So essentially, we would modify the template, a radio programming computer, you plug it in, and it's done.
And
But we
how-
still have staff time developing that.
And that's all encompassed in that 250 per radio?
Yeah.
Which, at this scale of 40 radios isn't much, but when we add, if we were to add
we increase
all
it,
of our
yeah.
mobile and portable radios, that is quite significant.
Have we tried to negotiate it?
So the way our stance is that's exactly what we charge the city. It's what we charge all the other municipalities. It's kind of the most fair scale that we can come up with. We have far less staff time involved, far less energy involved in the smaller municipalities. As you grow, as the system becomes more complex, as you have more radios on the system, it involves a lot more staff time. It involves a lot more energy on our part, almost to the point of having to make a full-time person. Okay.
So, but our radios, you're not monitoring or you're not providing services unless we hit the panic button, or, because
Not
emergency services
necessarily.
on scene are not going to be talking to 34 people at the high school necessarily, but, I mean, you're not dispatching people, you're not providing a lot of those services.
No, and because you guys aren't a dispatched agency, right? You're not a law enforcement agency, you're not a fire agency. You fall much like City Public Works or Road and Bridge, for example. They do their own thing. You guys do your own thing. But we do provide a whole lot of monitoring and a whole lot of capability, especially when it comes to response to an incident, where, yeah, you are actually directly talking to those folks.
I'm just, the 250 is, most of these radios, in my experience with 800 radios, you're going to program them once, and then you might not have to touch them unless you just do a routine maintenance on it, because they are very reliable and stable systems.
Recommended routine maintenance is once yearly, put them on a service monitor. The typical mentality of most agencies in the state, they buy it, they program it, ship it out the door, and they never touch it again. Unfortunately, that leads to poor coverage or newer coverage issues developing, so to speak. So we're very aggressive with it. All of our radios within the county and within the city get maintained once a year, especially the handhelds. Mobiles, we look at every 2 years. We typically do 1, maybe 2 firmware upgrades a year. Most state radios, they haven't seen a firmware upgrade since they were bought. And those firmware upgrades have a lot of features. They have a lot of bug fixes, things like that, that are critical to safety.
So where are you thinking that cost should be based on your experience?
Based on my experience
Yeah.
from the people I talk to, is that emergency sensors don't charge that fee.
Okay.
So, but I know if we were to buy a maintenance plan
Then it
from
would-
like Motorola, there is a fee for that. Like at the police department, we typically, if we had 6 radios that need fixed, we mailed them to Great Bend, they fixed them and they mailed them back. We had spares that were available to make up the difference. I mean, there is a convenience to just drive down to a building and get it done, but at that rate, it seems exorbitant.
And I respect that, and I understand. I feel like in order to meet the demands for safety that we've been demanding, we need to work with our partner in Ford County, because that's who we're most closely going to be connected with whether it's a fire or an emergency or need for the police or whatever. And I want to have that relationship, and that just comes with this, and it's part of what I have to accept in this program. And if that means we're going to limit the number of radios that we have at each elementary school, because we are going to have radios at each elementary school, we'll figure out what that means exactly, and we'll try to monitor. But to be safe, we've got to make sure we provide every location with the same opportunity to have the same services. And so that's where I'm coming from on that. And I understand your point, and I know Elliot and I have developed a relationship, and I know I'll be on him about that several times. Not every time. I don't want him to cringe every time he sees me, so.
Yeah, I mean, our cooperation in working with the emergency services in the county is probably better than most already, and it is critical. I
get that.
I
And I'm not doing it because of that, I'm doing it for that. You understand what I'm saying?
I do.
Yeah.
I do, but I mean, if, in the grand scheme of things, if we put the same stuff at the state site that is a few more miles outside of town for no fee compared to this, just clarification, their services they're offering is worth a fee, it's just.
Not that fee.
Not that I don't think we should do this by any means.
I would say it's
Part of the
actually more than
discussion is-
reasonable.
Get that?
I mean, just based on like the average going rate for radio techs, I mean, just to get a on-site visit to pick up radios, you may be looking at $75 to $275, depending on how far they have to drive.
That's
and
why we
depending on
always
what their
mailed them, 'cause
mileage
they
rate
were
is.
cheap at the city.
So, I mean, there's, the flat Motorola depot rate to have a radio sent from Great Bend to Motorola for repair is $380. Our preventative maintenance is designed to prevent that, because it doesn't matter if it's a broken knob or something else. If you send it off to Motorola, it's $380.
Do you guys fix those type of things on
We
the
can,
maintenance, the valves
absolutely.
and stuff?
Does that $250 include fixing those, like if you take it in and
Yeah,
then?
yeah, we keep a ton of spare parts. We're doing a whole lot of things here locally.
And more than likely, the $250 would be a fee that we could count on for more than a year or two?
Yeah, yeah. We haven't raised it since its inception.
All right, that's good, thank you, just wondering about that. The other thing I had a question on is, and maybe I'm not understanding this right, but you didn't find it necessary that each of the 3 schools that were designated as, that they need a radio also as shelters?
No, the
They don't.
Comanche and the high school are the 2 schools that have the trouble reaching each other, and we need that bi-directional amplifier in
That,
both of
okay.
them. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
But the people that would open the shelters at the schools would have a radio, is that correct?
I provide those organically to the shelter
Okay,
operation.
Oh,
all I
I'm
was
sorry, you're talking about the 3 shelters.
Yeah, I was just
talking about the,
wondering.
okay.
Yeah, no, I was just
No,
wanting to make sure.
that's provided by the county.
Okay.
And the volunteers that come to there.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And at this point, do we know how many channels that we'll have? Or is it kind of open as we build out? I know this is just the high school and then administration, but is it?
There's no technical limitation on my end at this point.
Well, I would,
One more question. Sorry. So neither middle school will have a radio?
Not yet. They'll have the bi-directional amplifier, so they'll be able to use the radios they currently have until we replace the radios with the connecting to the county.
Yeah, middle schools have the same setup they've had the past few years until we get the bidirectional amplifiers taken care of. And then as we move down the road to the new additional radios, that'll get taken care of then.
and the
So
high
they're not-
school and the middle school can't talk right now on the same channel anyway, or are they on the same channel?
By
I'm sorry.
choice.
Can't take the top line to the on our current.
Yeah.
Right.
But once we go to this new radio, we will have a channel where they could communicate
You'll have,
once they
I
all
know,
have the same radio.
and I know Matt's had lots of discussions with me back and forth, but we've talked about a full district-wide channel, an announcement talk group. We've talked about talk group
Maintenance
for
and
each school.
custodians.
We've talked about a wide area maintenance. We've talked about buses. We've talked about all sorts of different talk groups and channels.
So that.
And they can accommodate all that.
Thought about sooner than not.
Yeah, I think it's significant financially, but to do them all at the same time makes.
Right.
Like the middle schools and stuff like that.
Well, and understand, I was
Oh,
just
not just a few, at least.
trying not to drown. I'm trying to jump in and swim.
No, I know that.
And so we're starting with the high school. Next month, we're doing the bi-directional amplifiers. And then once we see where this puts us, it's very possible we could turn around in this same calendar year, or budget year, if you will, and order more radios. We have both middle schools, but we also have the buses we need to talk about too. And you know, but once we talk about the user agreement, we're thinking mostly about our activity trips and that sort of thing as far as the radios, because I don't think we're going to be able to afford a service agreement for a radio in every bus. That's 60-some buses.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay.
I just would hate to throw them away, if we can
Yeah.
use them
That's why.
and stick them.
I get that.
Elementaries all have a lot of entrances and exits, and I just think,
And to Matt and Dr. Dirkson's credit, I mean, we looked at, we didn't start out here. We started out going, okay, what do you have?
Yeah.
What could we make work here? What could we patch together? What could we, can we join systems? Can we do all this other stuff? And it all started becoming very cost prohibitive when it came down to it. So we did explore pretty much every avenue we could. And really kind of landed on, this is probably the safest, most cost-effective model. So we've spent an inordinate amount of time working with the school district to make sure that our kids are safe. So
thank you.
I'll move for approval.
Motion by Ryan and a second by Jamie. All in favor? 6-0. Thank you, Elliot.
Thanks very much. Appreciate your help, and thank you, board.
I think we all appreciate Dr. Dirksen looking out for the funds and not going in and throwing it all out.
I'd like for it all to be possible, but it's not.
Appreciate that.
We don't want you drowning.
All right. Next item, I'm asking for your approval for a second reading of the board policies. I did take time to go through and read each policy. Some interesting notes I just might point out. The first one, sorry for the gallery, that the KASB recommendation for the first one has to do with suspension of administrators, but it does. And now they have a specific policy that outlines suspension of administrators. Previously, that fell under licensed and classified staff, that the superintendent had authority to do that with pay. Now they not only have a specified policy for that, but then they follow up with a second policy that clarifies that still only the board can suspend without pay, should that ever be necessary. Then there was a revision of the policy for public information officer, which we have. Then the fourth item had to do with the legal law change, and basically you have to adopt that. And then the emergency drills applies to all buildings. It's just the lowering of the number, but by statute that had to be presented, so we want that approval. GAA, just a change in wording from children to students. And then GAAA, which is the Equal Employment Opportunity and Non-Discrimination, their portion they're recommending that you have to approve, and we will. GAAB follows the same guidelines, and this has to do with discrimination, not just employment. GACB, we follow this, and Director of Safety and Security is an example. Has to do with job descriptions recommended, and we have job descriptions and make new ones when we have new positions. So I think we're in line there. Thought this was interesting also. KSB recommends that you create a paper trail to provide evidence to parties for entering a relationship with a new hire. Bottom line is many school districts are losing new hires before they ever get them. You have a paper trail you can hold them to that contract. If you just made a phone call and they agreed to come and then they never show up, legally you don't have any bite to stand on. GACCA, just want to be transparent about the nepotism, make sure that we understand the nepotism policy. And nepotism policies are not required by law, but they are good practice. And I think that good point to point out, I didn't underline it here, but it has to do with no relative is directly supervising that relative or spouse. I think that's a good policy. In Western Kansas, where we become a small community, nepotism does happen. We hire a lot of spouses, we hire a lot of employees. And full disclosure, my opening statement in my interview was two of my daughters are already working here. If that's a problem, then I thank you for your time and charge you a meal and go home. But it didn't turn out that way, so that was a great deal. Anyway, I want to make sure you understand that on nepotism. And then assignment and transfer, superintendent of the board is often making transfer assignments, so they changed it to that, giving the superintendent the authority, which usually comes from the administration. Then there were two policies, they added a comma, so that's what you're approving tonight, is a comma. And then GAHB, political activities. We need to be very cognizant of this, especially in the times that we live in now. Have had a lot of employees trying to use different things. State law specifically prohibits the use of public funds, vehicles, machinery, and equipment to advocate for particular candidates for election. It does not prohibit the use of these resources for political issues. Sometimes there are political issues that by expanding this policy added in 2015, there was an above-average number of employees using district email accounts and posties to send letters to legislators and others concerning political issues, legislation concerning schools' impact on student achievement, contain unintended consequences for school districts. Board members and administrators are often called to testify before these committees. A definition of advocacy of any political issue was added to exclude. In other words, they're giving us permission with this to allow teachers or administrators to go testify, even though it might be a political issue. But they're not giving you permission to campaign for candidates. And we need to make sure that we remember that. And then the next policy gives us permission to require drug testing if we so desire. Another one changes certified to licensed. And updates. And then the last one had to do with out-of-state students and the legislation that is changing the funding for students from out of state. So it has to do with enrollment. Doesn't affect us to my knowledge. Anyway, so with that being said, in your second reading, I want you to know that I have no quandaries with any of the policies. I just wonder when this mercy killing is going to end. It seems like every 6 months we have to go through this. But it's critical because as a school board, you're in charge of two things. You're in charge of policy and you're in charge of evaluating the superintendent. And that's what you control in the whole process of all of this. So I want you to take it seriously. I'm not promoting any of these policies. They're KESB recommendation. I do promote what KESB stands for. I think they care about the school districts in the state of Kansas, and this is their recommendation. I present it to you. If you approve it, we'll make sure it gets put in on our online database now. We don't keep an actual, used to try to keep a collection of the policies, and now it's all online. And it is up to date, as near as I know, to the best of our ability. You can pay to have that reviewed, but that does cost you some money, and at some point, it's worth your time to do that possibly. And I don't know when the last time Dodge City had their board policies reviewed. That's nothing I'm recommending tonight. I just want you to know that's out there.
I make a motion to approve.
Okay.
Second.
Motion by Tracy and a second by Ryan. All in favor? 6-0.
And I didn't mean to take up all your time on that, but I just tried to emphasize how I do believe it is important. It's also important that we provide a playground at Ross, and I think you know historically that we lost the playground at Ross, and we've been trying to replace that for a while. And this does need to be purchased so that we can hopefully try to get it ready to go before the start of the year. We do, come to find out, have some money coming back on the bond project because there was some money that went forward and then some expenses didn't turn out as high as they thought they were going to be. Some of that money may be able to be put into this, so some of the numbers may not be exact on what fund it's coming out of, because if we can use that under the bond issue, that if that's possible, we check with the accountant and all that. So there may be some difference there. I don't have those numbers broken down for you now. The number that stays the same is the cost of the playground that we're purchasing that we need to have for full replacement.
And we're going to use this style and type of playground, this company, for all the elementary schools that have playgrounds, if anything needs replaced or updated.
I believe there's been a relationship with that company to do that, but I can't answer that honestly, that I know what we're doing with every playground. All I know is that this is a bid that's been put together for a while with this company, and that was selected, I think, because of Greenbush, wasn't it? Yeah. Because that was the bidding process that allowed for the procurement for the purchase of this. Amy, do you know any more?
I don't, except that, I know
So I think there is some similarities there. And
They did do our past, our PTO purchase, that small portion. This company, that portion as well.
so I'll look into more on the playground for the others. The thing that I know is critical is we went this entire year without this playground. And I mean, because it was the school year before that playground broke down. And we haven't had that replacement, and we need that for those kids. And so I'm asking for this because this has been put together, there's been a lot of work into it, and it's just got to happen. So I'll look into that part on what we're doing for here. Sherry, do you know why the playground was torn down at Central because of drainage or something with the AstroTurf?
Yes, and then as they were putting it back in, they hit a water line and realized that all the water lines are underneath where the original, that smaller playground was.
Yep.
So they moved it now to the north, in that same area, just to the north, so they're avoiding water lines that they could possibly hit if they put it back in work.
And I can't say with certainty that it's the same company that we have. But we ran into a real problem. We're talking about the northeast playground, which is designed for the lower grades, the kindergarten and the preschool. And they had it all set up and then found a problem. And when they went in to solve the problem, they found an even bigger problem. And so they had to tear that playground all out after putting it together and getting all the hopes up for the kids. And now we're trying to get it put back together. And that's the reason I'm so hesitant, is I don't think it's the same company. So I don't really know what configuration we have, whether that was part of the bond bid. I don't know, but I will get an answer for you.
Bill told me that they were, the people who are installing, or this quote for installation is a different company that did the installations of the others because of an issue. Maybe that's the issue he was referring to.
Yeah, I think that rings a bell in my head too. So, yeah, I didn't think they were the same, and I do remember some of that. So I just wanted to be honest about that and make sure I find that out, because I didn't come prepared to know about. Because I'm also wondering in my head, because we've done a study now at Beeson, we have done that. Wasn't it Beeson that had the drainage problem?
Lynn.
Lynn, was it Lynn? And Lynn is where they've done that study now, and we need to figure out what the results of that study are and where we're going with that, because that is complete, and I haven't seen the results of that, but I do know that that has been done. And so there's a whole process in place of what we've got to figure out. And that goes back to the capital outlay schedule, trying to figure out what we're doing, so.
I'd just like to see a cohesiveness throughout the district of playground equipment so that we know it's all the same kind and
And
same
I'm all with
safety.
you on cohesive. That's why I'm begging for a playground at this school, because they don't have one. So
Deal.
And then we could maybe get an update about Lynn, maybe at the next.
that's a great
In
idea.
August or something, and kind of where we're at with it.
I will write that down.
I'll move for approval.
All right.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Ryan and a second by Jamie. All in favor? 6-0. Now we're to the part of the meeting that everyone's been looking forward to. We have item E, we have 45 items. I'm going to read through all of them. If you have a question about one of them, if you'd make a note, and then when we get through them all, then we can have discussion, and then we will approve all of them with one motion.
Before you begin, I want to point out that the state recommends 31 items to be covered at their annual organizational meeting, so we exceed that. We're overachievers. The only item that is on their list of 31 that I did not see in our list is designate someone for impact aid, which I would assume if we ever qualified for impact aid, it would be the superintendent would be the designee by default, so I'm not worried about that. But of those 31 items, everything is covered within this list, and this list is smaller than it was last year by design, so,
Yes. All right. I'm going to get hydrated just a minute.
yes. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay, number one, appointment of board clerk. We have the executive director of business and operations that has been and is recommended to continue. Number 2, appointment of deputy board clerks, and this is in the absence of the executive director of business. Number 3, appointment of board treasurer. The district comptroller is recommended to continue. Number 4, appointment of deputy board treasurer. Recommendation is the business office fiscal assistant to continue. Number 5, appointment of school attorney. The recommendation is Clayton Curbs to continue in that capacity. Number 6, appointment of officer for free and reduced meal application appeals. The superintendent is to serve in that capacity. 7, appointment of food service representative. The supervisor of school nutrition has been serving and is recommended to continue. 8, appointment of school attendance officer. The superintendent or designee to continue in this capacity. 9, appointment of the hearing officer for student suspension and expulsion. Superintendent or designee to serve. 10, appointment of authorized agent to receive gate receipts. It's recommended that Dodge City High School, Comanche Middle School, and Dodge City Middle School activities and athletic directors continue to serve. 11, appoint Freedom of Information Officer. The Public Information Officer is recommended to continue to serve in this capacity. 12, appoint district's workers' compensation designated representative. The Western Plains Express Care will continue to serve in this capacity. 13, designate district's workers' compensation insurance provider. United Heartland Insurance Company is recommended to be, we've already previously approved that by the board. 14, designate district's unemployment insurance third-party administrator. The unemployment insurance services is recommended to continue in this capacity. 15, designate district representative for Kansas Public Employees Retirement System. The school district's benefits specialist is recommended to continue to serve. 16, designate compliance officers for federal section 504/ADA. Recommended that executive director of business and operations continue to serve in this capacity. 17, designate compliance officer for federal anti-discrimination laws, including Title 6, 7, and 9. Executive director of human resources is recommended to continue. 18, designate Children's Internet Protection Act compliance officer. The executive director of management information services recommended to continue to serve. 19, designate E-rate coordinator. Again, the executive director of management information services. 20, designate multicultural coordinator and civil rights contact person. The director of ESL and migrant education recommended to continue to serve. 21, designate coordinator for duties relating to homeless children. The supervisor of state and federal programs is recommended to continue to serve. 22, designate coordinator and liaison for duties relating to foster children. The supervisor of state and district information systems recommended to continue to serve. 23, designate officer to pay claims. It's recommended that the executive director of business and operations continue to serve in this capacity with the authority to pay claims. 24, designate depository for district funds. It is recommended that Sunflower Bank continue as depository for district funds. It's also recommended that the clerk of the board review bank signatures. 25, designate official newspaper, Dodge City Daily Globe, is recommended to continue. 26, designate district bond counsel, Gilmore and Bell, is recommended to continue to serve. 27, designate district financial advisor. Ransom Financial Consultants continue to serve in this capacity. 28, designate district bond compliance officer. Recommended that the executive director of business and operations continue to serve in this capacity. 29, designate district health benefit consultant. Benefit Health Advisor Group is recommended to continue to serve. 30, adoption of 2019-2020 calendar. It is recommended that the Board of Education adopt the 1,116-hour calendar in lieu of the daily attendance requirement. 31, instructional materials fees. It is recommended that the fees be assessed for the use of district-adopted textbooks and other instructional materials. For 2019-2020, elementary grades K-5, full year is 30, one semester is 15. Middle school grades 6, 7, and 8, 40 for a full year, 20 for one semester. High school grades 9 through 12, 55 for the year, and 30 for one semester. 32, other student fees. There are no general fees charged to students enrolling in the Dodge City Public Schools. 33, credits required for graduation. The graduation requirements for Dodge City High School meet or exceed the requirements of the Kansas Department of Education. 34, immunization policy. The district's immunization policy has been reviewed and complies with state regulations. 35, district organizational charts. It is recommended that the organizational charts of Dodge City Public Schools USD 443 be approved. 36, substitute teacher rate. The following teacher rates are recommended to be applied. $125 per day for 10 or fewer continuous days. $150 per day for 11 to 40 continuous days in the same position. And daily rate based on the special salaries base salary for over 41 continuous days in the same position. 37, establish 2019-2020 district meal prices. I'm not going to read all that, sorry. 38, establish mileage rate for reimbursement. Raise that rate to 58 cents per mile beginning July 1 for the 2019-2020 school year. 39, resolution to establish Board of Education meeting dates. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve resolution number 2019-0708A to establish our Board of Education meeting dates as presented. 40, resolution for rescinding policy statements. This resolution rescinds all policy actions established during the previous year and adopt all current written policies. 41, resolution to waive accounting principles. This resolution waives the annual requirement of generally accepted accounting principles and fixed asset accounting for 2019-2020. 42, resolution for destruction of records. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve this resolution regarding the destruction of records. 43, resolution for home rule. It's recommended that we approve this resolution regarding home rule. 44, resolution to establish petty cash funds for the Learning Center, the administration building, and postage reimbursement for the administration building. 45, resolution to establish activity funds. It is recommended that the board approve this resolution regarding activity funds.
It's a lot of information. Most of it is required that we do cover, and I'm open to answer any questions. We did make changes in the organizational chart. I think it more accurately reflects what we are. Items 26 and 27 are related specifically to having a large bond. I don't know that those items always need to be mentioned, and once we receive the bond or lower the charges on that, but obviously they are our counsel, and we do need that financial advisor still for that. So I wanted to point that out. And the adoption of hours is definitely required, and it definitely helps the district to go by hours rather than days. So appreciate that one. Any in particular you have a question about before we cover 45 items in one motion?
I'll move for approval. There's no questions. Or I'll move for approval anyway, we can ask questions after the second.
I'll second. All right, we have a motion by Ryan and a second by Tracy. All in favor? 6-0.
Did a great job.
I tried to make it interesting.
Thank you. Okay, next up, we have the Board of Education Committee assignments. For Park and Recreation, I'd like to ask that we do kind of a flip-flop and have Tracy as the first and Jamie as the second on that. Bright Beginnings and Head Start, Ryan has indicated that he'd like to continue in that capacity. Jeff has said he would like to continue with special ed. Pamela has indicated she'd like to continue with legislative, and both Tracy and Tammy have expressed interest in the capital outlay. And calendar is open if somebody would like to volunteer for that.
I'll volunteer for it.
Okay, so Pamela for calendar.
And what about a alternate for special ed? I didn't hear that.
Has Tammy, have you served?
I've done that. Is it on the third Tuesday, though?
I believe it's the third Tuesday, yes.
So you're not able to?
Well, the thing is, the Crisis Center Board meets on that third Tuesday.
Right.
But,
Sometimes it's the second Tuesday, but I think most generally it's
I mean,
the
if I
third.
know prior, sometimes we can move our board meeting. Right, Matt? Matt.
Matt?
Matt Turner. So, that's what I was gonna say, yeah. Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah. So, and maybe what I could do is talk to my board about just maybe permanently moving it to.
Well, last year Jeff attended 11 out of the 12, so.
Well, I know, and
And you
but
were the-
I
you were the
served on
alternate
that
then. Yeah.
before
Well,
previously,
that's
so I
right,
kind of
that's
have
right.
an idea.
So you have an idea.
So I'll talk to my board, so put me down and we'll see.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh,
Right, yeah.
All right.
And then on the alternate for Park and Rec, I believe Jay has served as our alternate on, we have.
The
so
alternate
we
for
have-
Park and Rec, who?
Well, we have Tracy and then Jamie, but then Jay Gifford has served.
Is it Gifford or Sean, either one? Yeah.
Okay, I'll put J/Sean, that someone's there to represent, so. alternate.
Jay Sean.
Jay Sean.
Okay, this is an action item, so if anybody
I'll
has
make
any
a-
changes or complaints.
I make
All right,
it, yeah, the
a
pages.
motion by Jamie,
A second.
second by Tammy, all in favor. 6-0. Okay, we're seeing the finish line here. All right, we've got monthly review of bills. So if you sign up for August, then you get February and so on. So who would like to have August and February?
I can do.
Okay, Ryan? And September and March?
I'll take it.
Okay, Jamie? October and April?
I'll do it.
All right, Tracy? November and May?
I'll do that.
Tammy? December and June? All right, Pamela? And retired Jeff Hires gets January and July. Okay, this is also a motion, action item. All right, motion by Ryan, second by Tammy, all in favor. 6-0. All right, announcements. August 1st, 2019 is enrollment day for all schools, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. August 13th and 14th, new teacher orientation and introductions at the Learning Center. Introductions are at 1 o'clock. Do you want board members present if possible for those introductions?
Absolutely, if possible.
Okay.
1 o'clock.
On both days at 1 o'clock or
The 13th.
Yep.
13th.
the 13th? Okay. And then Thursday, August 15th is all staff donuts and coffee from 7 to 7:45, and the welcome at 8 o'clock. This will be at the Civic Center, and Alice training will follow that. August 12th, Board of Education meeting here in the Austin Boardroom at 6 o'clock. You do not have to wear jackets. August 20th, first day of classes. August 26th, Board of Education meeting at Beeson at noon. Are there items for future board meetings or discussion?
And if you can be at the all-staff gathering, I'd appreciate.
Yes, sorry.
His attendance. No,
yeah,
that's all right.
sorry.
But on the Thursday, the 15th, would like to have you all there if you can be there.
All right, we need an executive session for discussion of personnel matters. How long
Okay, if we can reverse the order and do negotiations first, I'd
Okay.
like for Scott and Ramona, and we'll have our legal counsel too be here.
Okay.
And myself, and let's do negotiations first, and I think 5 minutes is more than enough. Why don't we say 3? Are you good with that?
That's not enough.
And then we'll follow that with personnel, with just me and the legal counsel, and
Okay.
5 minutes there.
Make a motion for executive session for
Try to
3
get it
minutes.
going.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Tammy and a second by Jamie.
Yeah.
All in favor? 6-0. Thank you, everyone.